right, well, let's get started. This is calling to order the joint work session with Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, June 9th, 2015 at 6:01 p.m. This is the Gladstone City Council, in case you didn't know. And please, Jolene, will you take the roll call, please?
Councilor Nelson?
Here.
Councilor Merschel?
Here.
Councilor Johnson?
Here.
Councilor Sickman?
Here.
Councilor McMahon?
Here.
Councilor Reiser?
Here.
Mayor Jacobellis?
I'm here. Okay, so who's going to kick us off on the Meldrum Bar Park possible restoration project?
Well, we have two representatives from the Port of Portland here, Lise, did I say that correctly? Lise Glancy and Kelly Mel. I'll let you do that one. Sure. Okay, so yeah, it's a little awkward setup here, but we're.
I have to be nice to these people because I retired from the Port of Portland. Be nice.
Well, again, thank you, Mayor and the City Council, for having this session and taking the time to talk to us about the project. Again, I'm Kelly Madalinsky. I'm with the Port of Portland. I'm a program manager there, dealing with the Port's involvement with the Portland Harbor Superfund site. Also in the audience, as Pete introduced, was Lise Glancy. She's our government affairs manager, also with the Port. And then I'll also introduce John Roonan and Brent Hadaway with Cascade Environmental. Many of you guys know those people, but they're also here to answer questions. And again, the thrust of this session in terms of my goals and hopefully your goals is to really answer and address concerns, questions on the project proposal that we're going to talk about here. And then ultimately, hopefully at the end of the session is seek, if you will, your approval to allow your staff to work with us on a potential agreement to implement the project overall on that front. And so I think my understanding is that in your packets you already have a brief description of the project itself as well as figures associated with that, and then an overall schedule. And I'll go over it a little bit, but I wanted to make sure. And if you don't, we have handouts as well for those in the public. So I'll try to just do this very high level in terms of the project, and then we can get into more detail as you'd like as we talk more about it. But at a very high level, the scope of the project is to remove that bulkhead area, that sheet bulkhead, to remove that, and in that area enhance that shoreline as needed, including planting some vegetation, etc. And then also as part of this project is to remove a portion of that parking area space that you referred to as, I understand, Dull Beach area. We would still keep parking space there, my understanding roughly 8 to 10 parking spots, but the remaining of the parking area, we would basically remove that area, remove the riprap, lay back the slope, and then plant native species, etc., associated with this. And all of this work is really in the form of restoration habitat for basically the salmon overall on that. And so that's just, if you will, a high level on the project itself. The schedule for this, as we move forward, would be to actually construct it next year. So we would hopefully have it completed by November of 2016. So it's a fairly ambitious schedule, and so over the summer and the fall, what we would be doing, we would be working a lot with the city, if you will, on the design and overall on the project itself associated with this. That's again at a very high level, the project itself. One of the things that we have in the schedule as well, or one of the things we would do a lot of, is monthly coordination meetings with the staff, etc. So a few other things I would like to say about the project itself too going forward is that for the Port, if you will, we want to make sure that this is mutually beneficial for all of us. I understand that sheet pile wall is something that's been on the mind of the city of getting removed. We, as the port, have an obligation to deliver a project that improves habitat, and we want to do that moving forward. We fully would expect and anticipate reimbursing the city in terms of their cost for implementing this kind of project, in terms of their staff time, the attorney in terms of working on the agreement, etc., associated with that. And then also, another part of this is that we understand that public participation is important. I mean, we're the Port of Portland, and so we are a public agency, so we fully anticipate and understand and will work with you and your staff, if you will, to make sure that's part of this overall process. And then the final thing I would want to make sure about this project overall is the port's doing this as an obligation as a result of an impact we had when we did some cleanup at one of our facilities to do a restoration project. So ultimately we need approval from the regulatory agency, and that's the Environmental Protection Agency. And there we've provided them input, this concept, if you will, and they're on board and in favor on that, understanding that ultimately the city has to approve it and we have to move forward in the process. But ultimately we need approval from them. We've gotten preliminary approval from them, but ultimately we need that, and in the schedule you'll see that we anticipate that if we move forward with the project in the fall time frame. And so while we may all be on board with the project, ultimately EPA needs to be as well. We think that's going to occur and can happen with this project, but I just want to make sure that's out there and fully aware. So kind of with that said, I think I'm going to stop here to make sure we have enough time for discussion. If people have questions, obviously questions, and we can address them, and then John and Brent and Lisa as well can help address them as we go along. So I think I'll stop there, as I said. Not twice.
Are all the park people here?
Three of us are here, Mr. Randall.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. Since I retired from your organization a while ago, the project is great, and I see where it's needed. The only problem I have is a parking lot, because we have a lot of people, handicapped, elderly people that use. That's the only parking lot from Meldrum Bar all the way up to Doll Beach, where they can drive down and park and watch the boats and the fishermen, and it's right the joint where Clackamas and Willamette meet. The number of spaces, I hate to see that reduced, because sometimes it's pretty full. You have quite a few cars down there. It's a great viewing area, and it's safe and level, and there's no rocks or anything. If we remove part of that, I think we're going to take a lot away from these folks. But the rest of it is great. I think it's great. Just, I don't know, the number of spaces, it seems pretty limited.
Well, you know, one of the things I would add, one of the initial concepts was to actually remove almost the entire parking lot. But based on that kind of concern, and then raised by the city staff as well as I think several of the members here in the Parks and Rec Committee, is to have more of a keep some of those parking areas. And again, right now we're thinking 8 to 10 parking areas. I mean, you are removing some of those, but again, there's access there in terms of that space for people to park. My understanding as well is that people can park on the upper area as well, even though they would have to walk down.
Well, they got trees and brush up there too. That makes it kind of hard to see what's going on in the river.
Okay. But this, right, well, that would be part of the thing that we would try to work more with in terms of accommodations of what we can do with the overall design, et cetera, in terms of the city staff. But I think the overall concept is still to remove part of that parking lot overall. And so that's part of the consideration here. I mean, we'll try to work, again, with the different departments within the city and obviously through the public process to accommodate those kinds of concerns, but fundamentally there would be some parking lot space removed.
Yeah, it's the only parking lot in that whole stretch of the river where people can actually drive down and sit there and view the river and the activities on the river. There's no other place along that river at least from Mildred Bar up, so.
Right.
Is it possible to add the amount of parking spaces that we're taking away down there? Could part of the plan be to increase the size of the parking lot above?
That's definitely a potential possibility to take a look at that. Overall, on the scope of the project, we'd have to look in terms of the constraints and what that would mean overall. You know, I'm not as familiar with that. I know that obviously there's space there in the upper parking lot, but we'd have to take a look at that. I mean, that could be part of the discussion.
But it would be something that could be covered under this mitigation plan.
It could be,
Okay.
potentially, yeah.
You don't have a lot of room to move up on top, because you got a golf course right behind it.
Right.
So that kind of restricts your
That's a
movement
pretty
as far
wide
as-
area though, Len. Above there is pretty wide.
Yeah, it is pretty wide. That's
I
what
mean, paved wide, it's pretty wide.
Yeah. So if you want to expand, you don't want to, there's no reason really to expand up there, I wouldn't think.
So I've been through there frequently. It's a beautiful area. I've noticed that many of the cars have handicap stickers on it. It's easy to say we'll add more parking up above, but you know that's coming from somebody who's able to walk, and I'm not sure all those people are. And I have trouble understanding where this pull out the parking lot comes from, because I've heard it over and over again, and I think all we're going to have is a bunch of angry constituents here, and I can't defend that position. I just don't think that's defensible. So I got two other questions on top of that. The first is, how is this the city of Gladstone's problem, and who's paying?
Sure. So maybe to address that in terms of whose problem this is, I wouldn't want to look at it as a problem, but as a overall need. The port, if you will, has a need to do a mitigation project, and that has to be up somewhere along the Willamette River. My understanding is there's a desire from the city to remove the bulkhead, that bulkhead area.
Definitely.
And get rid of that and restore that shoreline as much as possible, because it's an eyesore, as well as potentially creating some erosional issues that we need to look at. So that's a need from the city overall. My understanding as well is, I hear you about what I understand about that being a very attractive place for people to park, but it's also my understanding that that usually gets flooded, and that there are some issues associated with managing stormwater concerns related to that parking lot. And again, those are things that I understand are the needs of the city, and so based on those mutual needs, we're trying to solve both problems, if you will. So that's the way I would look at that.
You didn't answer my second question.
No, and the second question in terms of payment and the cost, which I'll get right here, is that the port would bear the costs overall in implementing the project.
All of it?
All of it, including the payment, again, of reimbursing the city in terms of their staff time, et cetera, for the project.
Can you expand about the stormwater?
Well, yeah, and I'll look to maybe John and Brent maybe can add a little bit, but or even the parks folks. But again, stormwater, you have this pavement area, and so if you're getting it, you have to manage that stormwater is getting into the overall river stream, flooded, etc. And so potentially, again, if you're having cars on there, you may have grease, etc., pollutant loading, etc., and you want to be able to manage that overall.
So we should probably also be thinking about blocking off the bar from people driving out there for the same reason.
The bar.
Mildred
Bar.
Bar, where they go out on the
Okay,
gravel.
sure.
Different bar.
Yeah, different bar. Okay.
Not bogies.
Yeah, exactly.
Gravel bar.
The gravel bar, right.
Well, that's an area I'm not familiar with that, the bar, and being able to drive out there, etc. So I can't really speak to that. I don't know if others.
And I would answer probably yes. At some point, we're probably going to have to stop having people drive out there for just that reason. And we probably wouldn't be allowed to build a parking lot there again if we ever wanted to, because it's in a floodplain and everything, would be my guess. So it's not like, I think it's a good thing. you are doing a couple good things, and the stormwater runoff is very apparent that that's where the people park and that's where the oil drips. And just like you said, when it floods to there and the oil gets in there. So it's a issue to be dealt with. So.
Can you just address the potential, other than paying for the project and paying for staff time, is there additional funds available to the city for this project to then help with whatever, park restoration, trail system, things of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, that's been raised as well in terms of, again, my understanding there's other needs from the city that they would like to move forward with that are sort of unfunded. And again, we're willing to talk with you about that in terms of helping out with that, in terms of some type of compensation, in terms of right away to be using these, like, for example, the parking area for this project. What I would say to that is I would hope that we could find a way that's both fair and feasible in terms of what that would look like overall. And that would be part of the negotiation or the discussion with the city moving forward on the implementation.
I've got one other question, if I may, about the parking area that, you know, that gets, well, two. Sorry, guys. You said about putting native plants in that area. Wouldn't that, when it floods, those be washed away, is one question. And two, there's a wall along that parking lot. What's the plan for that?
Sure. I am going to defer that question a little bit to Brent and John to address in terms of the planting and stuff. I'm not a biologist,
Okay.
so I'll let Brent address that.
Yeah, please.
Come on up here, Brent.
Brent Hadaway, Cascade Environmental Group. I'm an ecologist. The design hasn't been developed yet, and there's a fairly clear scour line along the Willamette and the Clackamas River there. So the design, the restoration would include whatever is appropriate in terms of the hydrologic conditions. So planting would be only above a certain elevation. We would design the planting to incorporate all the public comments as well as the concerns from EPA, and strike a balance and deliver that message back both to EPA and the city. I think the goal in moving a project like this forward, where there's a public investment, is to just be very open with concerns of the city, make EPA aware of those, make the city aware of where the EPA is coming from, because you're both public agencies, and we're really just the translators in that process. And I'm sorry, what was the other question?
So the wall, there's a brick wall that's in place. Looks like, you know, kept a rock wall with cement that's keeping. What's the plan for that?
We've had discussions with the EPA and been very clear that all the existing infrastructure that's owned by the city of Gladstone has to be protected and continue to function the way it does now, and that all the design work that would be done would be stamped by a certified engineer with all of those project goals factored in.
Okay. So is it going to stay or go, or you don't know yet?
We'd have to do the analysis to make sure that we're taking the right action so that it would all be stable. We would try to incorporate as much habitat benefit in that as we could, but that's part of it's one of the, we call it project goals that you put in at the very beginning, so that when you're designing your analysis, you're going through all the steps to figure out the hydraulics and all the other factors out there. That's an equal balance with all the restoration goals.
I would think that wall would remain because that would secure the slope for the parking lot up above. If you take the wall out, then you've got possibility of it coming down.
I think it's probably the port's perspective, and certainly ours as the company engineering it. You know, if we touch it, it's ours. So we're not going to go out and expand the footprint of the project beyond what's necessary to meet our goals and to make sure that everything that the city has invested in is going to remain stable.
Secure that slope from the upper lot. So.
Yeah, I've looked at that, and that's one of the things that we've, our engineer zeroed in on that very quickly.
Anything from the parks people? weigh in on some of this stuff.
Thank you.
You guys could sit down right in the front. I mean, we're just trying to make this work. It's not a formal stand-up presentation.
We don't bite.
Here from our committee and Linda Cosgrove, and you know, we've looked at this. The mayor has part of one meeting, and so has Steve Johnson and Councilor Weisner, when we were looking at the whole issue of erosion in the Clackamas and other areas. And I want to tell you there's a bigger picture here, but we're totally in support of this project, okay? The issue here is you've got very qualified consultants that can make something happen, who have ties to, I don't want to say this publicly, deep pockets, deeper than mine, to get some things solved. They have access to funds that would help solve some project concerns. But I want you to be aware of a couple more things that we as a committee have looked at, and I'm going to pass this around to you. And this is a summary of basically 4 major issues that we feel are important, that you may not think have relevancy, but we think do.
Jerry, do you mind stepping up to the mic?
Okay.
So
All right,
we make sure we get it on the recording?
All right.
Okay. I'll come over here to the proper location. The 4 issues are, we have a very dynamic river called the Clackamas. You all know that. I don't think anybody appreciates how powerful the Clackamas is. All my life I've watched this river do things, and then recently over the last 20-some years I've watched it really do things more personal note with our site down there. The Clackamas being a dynamic river is causing a lot of disturbance and changes into the area, and I want you to be aware of this. Issue number 3 is from 1939 on, there's been changes that were introduced, but I want you to look at a picture on the second page. If you don't have time to look at this.
No,
Yes, sir.
I was just going to say, we don't have but about 8 minutes left.
I'll be real quick.
Well, no, but I mean to talk about the Doll Beach
Okay.
bulkhead project.
This is a different
totally
project.
different.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'd ask you to take a look at this at your earliest
And I think
opportunity.
we should schedule another joint if you want to really
Okay.
delve into
Well,
this.
that's
I
what
don't
the
have a
city of
problem
Oregon
with
City
it.
would like to do too, and
Yeah.
also the city of West Lynn, because we're concerned about this whole dynamic down there. So let me go back to the nuts and bolts that you're asking for. We support this project. We support the consultants that you have because they can get things done on a much bigger scale. County Commission Chair John Ludlow is concerned about this whole thing too, not just your bulkhead, but the whole dynamic. And last but not least, I'm going to circulate a letter, which is coming around to, which I'll ask you to look at, from the Portland Spirit, who's also concerned. There's, for the first time in 20 years, 16 tours are going to come to this area, to your area. And the whole dynamic of that bulkhead, and it's constraining gravel from being scoured out of the river, since it collapsed in the river, is changed the channel. And it's very probable that the channel will be gone in less than a year, and the tourism things that you might want to do, or the city of Oregon City might want to do, the Legacy Project, are going to end. So we just want you to know that we spent a bunch of time on this issue, and we wanted to have you at least share that, take a look at that information. But it isn't a different issue. It's the same issue. It's part of a bigger dynamic that we all need to look at. Okay, together?
I think we've also got it under item number 12 on the agenda.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
So,
Is that a letter from us?
Yes.
yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I just
All right, so for the record, we support whatever these folks will do, okay?
Okay. Very good. All right. Yes,
Got a couple of questions. We're talking about the repayment of staff time and all of that. We've got another project going that I know some of you are familiar with, the Reinierson project. Is this the same sort of project where credits are going to need to be sold for this project to move forward? Or if everybody approves, including us, the citizens, DEQ, is there funding already available to move forward, or are we going to have to wait for credits to be sold on this project as well?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and that project is a little will be different than this project. There is no credit to be sold. Rather, what it is a sort of a one-for-one. We need to replace what we impacted with a cleanup action we did several years ago, and so this scope of work replaces that. So it's basically a one-for-one. And so the port would have to come up with, and would come up with the resources to implement the project, and there would be no credits being sold for it.
Okay.
It would be just the habitat restoration. I would also mention as well, besides just the upfront construction aspect in terms of payment or reimbursement, the resources, the port would also be responsible for the operation and maintenance period and an active period of roughly five years to make sure that whatever we did was established, such as the vegetation, et cetera, that it didn't go into the river, et cetera, and replanting that. So we would be responsible for that for a period of time, roughly an operation and functional phase, like 5 years.
When you talk about upfront costs, are you referring to upfront costs for the port or upfront costs for the city?
There would be, again, no upfront cost to the city because, we would reimburse the city for their staff time and also any resources associated with implementing the project, including an O&M phase, an operation and maintenance phase.
I think it looks pretty good. I mean, this is the very beginning. I think that, there's maybe a couple issues that could be talked about through the process to maybe make it a little better. But I think overall, it could be a good project for us.
I think we need options on that parking lot. I think we need to see some other options besides it's evil and it must go away. I think that we need to have a little more open mind on that.
Anyone else? So we're at a point where we could just direct staff to work with them towards what's the next step? What is necessary for us to move forward with this besides the staff working with you?
To me, the next step is truly working with the staff to scope out, again, overall the next steps in terms of the type of design. A lot of it now will be on us in terms of the design work that's necessary from going from this concept, and as Brent said very well, that we don't have a design proposal, and so we need to sort of take a look at that and then work with the city, with your staff, et cetera, to start back and forth in terms of the different concepts. And as mentioned by, looks like Mr. Johnson there, associated with, options with that parking lot and stuff, if there is any options.
So I got 3 head nods here, meaning move ahead, staff, 4 head nod, 5, 6, 7. Staff can start moving ahead and working with these guys.
And I would like to thank Steve, Linda, and Jerry for coming and joining us tonight on this project. So thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks to the port staff.
Yeah.
Appreciate you guys coming.
Thank you.
Awesome.
All right, we're going to adjourn out of the joint work session with Parks and Recreation, and now we're going to take a 2-minute break before we reconvene.
That word you had, maybe I need to look at
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order the Gladstone City Council, the Common Council. Our regular meeting, June 9, 2015 at 6:35 p.m. And Jolene, can you do the roll call again, please? Or is everybody here? No, you better do it again.
Okay. Councilor Nelson?
Here.
Councilor Mercero?
Here.
Councilor Johnson?
Here.
Councilor Sickman? Councilor McMahon?
Here.
Councilor Reisner?
Here.
Mayor Jacobelli?
Here. You all please join me for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, folks, if you haven't already, there's 5x7 yellow cards back there. If you want to speak, you need to fill out a card and hand it to Jolene, the Assistant City Administrator, seated to my right, your left. So right now we are taking business from the audience.
I have one. Miss Tammy Stemple.
Tammy Stemple, 6960 Winfield Court. Mayor, councilors, I wanted to give you an update on the projects we're working on. The TGM grants for the Transportation System Plan and Portland Avenue Refinement Plan have been created, reviewed by Jessica Valencia, who's our grant helper, and Jeff Smith, and will be submitted tomorrow. the Code Assistance Grant application will be completed and submitted after the Planning Council joint work session. There are numerous environmental projects for which we're pursuing partnering opportunities that have the potential of saving the city millions of dollars in stormwater and water quality management. We're making the regional connections that will help pull these projects together. It looks to me like we're finally moving the city forward. However, I'm terrified this may not be the case, that the countless hours of volunteer and staff time will be wasted. The community's been watching the new council hoping for progress, but what they see is a group of men flailing for control. I was recently approached to support recall petitions for 3 councilors and the mayor. When I asked why, I was told that their egos have gotten in the way of their position. I was told that they are in collusion by way of the selective meetings they continue to have. I was told they're getting rid of staff so they can control their replacements. I was told they can't make decisions because each counselor believes they personally run the city, when in fact they are a collective group that sets policy. The city administrator and staff manages the city. I could go on, but I think you guys get the picture. I consider all of you friends and father. Have worked with most of you for many years and helped with some of your campaigns. I know in my heart that these charges are not true, so I'm asking you all to please change this perception. Allow the city to heal from decades of stagnation and provide a smooth, seamless, and cohesive path forward. You do not work for yourselves, but work for us, so please consider this in all of your decisions. Moving forward, what you want needs to be taken off the table and replaced with what we want, what supports and connects our community. Only that will move the city forward. Thank you.
Very good, Tammy. Thank you.
For sure.
Any other business from the audience, Jolene?
No.
All right. Moving down to the consent agenda. We have 4 items. Item number 2, approval of minutes. Number 3 is a liquor license at 150 West Arlington. 4 is approval of the project list, and 5 is payment of May claims. Yes, Lynn?
I have a question on number 2, the approval of liquor license. I have a couple
number
questions.
3. Liquor license.
3, excuse me. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I should mention too, I had an email from Councilor Sickman earlier regarding some changes that needed to be made to the minutes. Most of them were they're all very minor.
Typos.
Typos that needed to be corrected, so I just wanted to mention that before Council adopts.
Len, did you have something above that, above the typos?
No, just I had a question on number 3. So I'll make a motion that we approve all except number 3.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Councilor Nelson, seconded by Councilor Sickman. All in favor for
Reisner.
consent agenda? Reisner. I'm sorry.
Getting better looking every day.
All in favor to approve those items on the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Okay. So those 3 items, and now we are going to deal with item number 3, the liquor license. We're pulling it off the consent agenda, or do we move it down low?
We just deal with it right now.
Okay.
So the owner of the business is here tonight to answer questions.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question for the lieutenant first. Do you have any questions or concerns about this?
Jeff Jolly, Lieutenant for Gladstone Police Department. We've checked the background and looked into the history. There's no concerns or issues that have been brought up through that. I've spoke directly to Mr. Eddy about this issue, and he can articulate what he plans to do with his business and provide some good insight to that. So
great, thank you. Come on up.
Name and address, please.
Vijay Reddy, proposed to be at 150 West Arlington Street, Gladstone, starting July 1st. Mr. Mayor and Councilman, Mr. Administrator, thank you, Lieutenant. I plan to bring in a small East Indian cafeteria. into that retail space. There's a commercial kitchen right now which is not being utilized, and I plan to prepare East Indian dishes, hot food, just like I'm currently doing at 4791 Southeast Thiessen Road in Milwaukee, about a couple miles away at my SNK Grocery in Delhi for the past 3 years. And you can check a number of 5-star Yelp reviews there. We're not able to serve alcoholic beverages there, beer and wine, because it's a grocery store in a neighborhood community that's just grandfathered for that purpose. However, having gotten the purchase process now, we feel it is in the business district and we should be able to conform to the city and state and county requirements to be able to serve both alcoholic beverages on premise as well as off. We intend to serve all our food prepared and packed in boxes, whether they will be eaten on site or taken off site. And all beverages will be served in recyclable plastic containers that will ensure two things. Number one, that there are no glass or aluminum for any incidents, as well as we have the control of the process, so we know that nothing is brought from the streets.
That was my
for
question,
consumption.
if you have somebody that can kind of monitor this and not be busy selling a product over here and having the liquor leave the premise via the sidewalk. And it sounds like you're going to have pretty tight control over this.
Yes, sir. My wife and I, we both have gone through the scrutiny with OLCC. We have done our self-examination. We've also done service permits approvals, and we have been selling alcoholic beverages for about 25 years in the United States in 2 different states with no issues. No issues.
Well, welcome to Gladstone. Hopefully it'll be very successful for you. I have no other questions.
Nothing else? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve number 3, liquor license.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Nelson, seconded by Councilor Mercer. All in favor of approval of item number 3 on the consent agenda, the liquor license, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Okay, number 3 is now approved. Moving down to,
I heard that, Dennis.
correspondence.
Truth hurts sometimes.
We had one letter from Dorothy Otto regarding a business license. I'm sure you all read it. Moving down to now the regular agenda items. Number 7, the public hearing fiscal year 2015-2016 budget and tax rate. Pete, can you?
Yes, so Mr. Mayor, by law, we're required to hold a public hearing before City Council adopts the budget. So now is the time for anyone from the public who wishes to address any item in the city budget to come up to the podium and express their comments.
Anybody wishing to speak out right now on this item? I don't see any takers. So that is the end of the public hearing on item number 7, the budget and tax rate, I'm sorry. So now we're moving to item number 8.
You need to...
What do you need?
No, that's your right. Sorry.
Now we're going to move to item number 8, which is resolution 1049, which is adopting the budget and setting the tax rate for fiscal year 2015-2016.
I make a motion that we approve resolution 1049.
Second.
All right, the motion was made by Councilor Nelson to approve resolution number 1049, was seconded by Councilor Johnson. All in favor, say aye. Oh, I'm sorry?
First, there's usually discussion if there's any.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Any discussion? Yes.
On the discussion, I went through and just verified the numbers from the budget package to this package, and maybe I screwed up, but I don't think so. They all seem to be correct based on that.
The only comment I have is, I questioned the $23,000 of the community schools contract, and last I heard there was neither party could find the contract, and I would like to see maybe some discussion before this check is written.
Actually, I found a copy of the IGA.
Okay.
So we do have a copy of that, and I will distribute that.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further, discussion-wise, on Resolution 1049? Okay. All in favor of adopting the budget, Resolution 1049? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That item, I guess I should, that resolution has passed. Okay, item number 9 on our packet is the...
So
Oh,
for
I'm
the
sorry.
record... Yep.
We are now recessing to the Urban Renewal Agency meeting out of our regular agenda. Item number 9 on that is approval of minutes of June 24th, 2014.
Question on that. I was not on the council at that time, so would it be appropriate to abstain from this?
Yeah, if you want to abstain, Counselor, you can, since you weren't there for the minutes, but I don't think you have to.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not a requirement that the body adopts the minutes officially. It's just a practice we do to ensure that the minutes are accurate and everyone sees them.
I move that we approve the minutes of June 24th, 2014 of the Urban Renewal Agency.
Second.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilman Reisner, seconded by Councilman Johnson, and I don't think we need a discussion on this. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, item number 9, the minutes have been approved. Down to number 10, which is the public hearing for the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget and tax increment. So, at this time, we were going to invite anyone that wants to speak on this matter to approach the microphone. Okay, not seeing any takers. We're going to move down to item number 11, which is the approval of Resolution UR-51, adopting budget and declaration of tax increment.
You looking for a motion?
I would entertain a motion.
I'd move that we adopt Resolution UR-51 to adopt the budget and declaration of tax increment for fiscal year 2015 and 2016.
Second.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilman Johnson and was seconded by Councilman Nelson. Discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Resolution UR-51 has passed. We've adopted that. Okay, now we are adjourning our Urban Renewal Agency meeting, and now we are reconvening to our regular agenda items. Number 12 was a letter from Parks and Recreation Board. I believe... Oh, well, we already received it in the last session. We all got a copy from Mr. Herman regarding the letter he was going to give us, so that's done. Okay, down to item number 13, which is Resolution 1050-1050, elect to receive state revenue sharing funds. All right.
Mr. Mayor, just to advise council, this resolution and the next are required by state law, so we can continue to receive state revenue sharing funds. It's right around, it's estimated this year to be around $105,000. So we recommend council adopt these resolutions.
All right. I will entertain any motion on Resolution 1050.
I make a motion that we approve of Resolution 1050, elect and receive state funding sharing funds.
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion was made by Councilor Nelson. It was seconded by Councilor McMahon. Discussion? No discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, all in favor of approving Resolution 1050? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Resolution 1050 has passed. All right, moving down to Resolution 1051, or 1051, certifying provision of 4 or more services for state shared revenues. Pete, can you educate us?
Again, to receive the state revenue sharing monies, a jurisdiction has to provide the services listed in the resolution, and the City of Gladstone does provide those services, and it's necessary to receive the monies, and staff recommends approval.
I take a motion.
Okay.
I'm
sorry.
I'd make a motion. If you, are you,
all right,
okay.
the motion.
I'd make a motion that we adopt Resolution 1051, certifying provision of 4 or more services for state shared revenues.
Second.
All right, the motion was made by Councilor Johnson, was seconded by Councilor Nelson. All in favor of, discussion? Good. Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, resolution number 1051 has been approved, or passed. Down to item number 15, resolution 1052, revising master fee schedule reflecting the changes in storm/sewer fees.
I make a motion that we approve Resolution 1052, revising the master fee schedule reflecting changes in the storm and sewer fees.
I second that.
Okay, the motion was made to pass the resolution by Councilor Nelson, was seconded by Councilor Mercereau. Discussion on the matter?
Couple of questions. On 15-2, it's talking about the storm sewer department and the rates and proportion retained by the city. So is this an increase to our ratepayers? Is that what I'm understanding? But what you've put in here is the amount that the city's retaining?
Right, so the amount listed here is just the amount that the city keeps in-house for maintenance of the delivery system. As you know, there's also, for the folks that live in the Oak Lodge district, and the majority of folks in town live in the Tri-City Sewer District, there are fees that are charged to them that go back to those entities for maintenance and operation of the sewer plants.
But this is a rate increase to the ratepayers?
It's a 5% rate increase.
And there was one a year ago, is that?
Correct.
Okay.
I had a question regarding, in the water and storm sewer discussion when we approved that master plan, it was discussed at that time that the storm sewer and sewer would be, I think it was worded, suggested or recommended, whatever, to separate that. I don't think it's the time to do that at the moment, but is that still the thought?
Well, if City Council decides to follow the recommendation, we were talking about setting up a separate utility for stormwater. So remove it from sewer. It would be in its own fund, have its own rate structure. Expenditures would be separated. But right now, we're still taking both the stormwater and sewer out of the same fund.
Okay.
So it's still combined.
Anything else? All right, so it sits. I'll entertain any motion if anybody wants to talk about it or move it forward. Oh, we already did that. I'm sorry. I got it. Okay, so We had the motion, it was seconded, we had our discussion, so all in favor of passing Resolution 1052, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Resolution 1052 is passed. Moving down to ordinance number 1457, item number 16 on our agenda, amending Chapter 13.04 of the Gladstone Municipal Code by increasing water rates and reaffirming all remaining provisions of Chapter 13.04 of the Gladstone Municipal Code.
Mr. Mayor, I did hand out an additional copy of the ordinance to everyone. It should be on your desk. In Section 2 and Section 3, we had some wrong dates. So Section 2, the effective date for this ordinance, if adopted tonight, would be July 9th, 2015. And Section 3, we had last year's date, but included the 9th day of June, 2015.
Hey, Pete, I have one more question on that. Then on subsection 5, you've got dollar figures written out that don't match what are in the parentheses. So you've got $5 and in parentheses $5.15. You've got $2.50 and you have $2.58, and $20 and you have $20.60. So I just asked that.
Yeah, we need to
fix that.
Apologize for that.
And I have a question. In the newsletter, the water rate is listed as $1.50 increase. I'm assuming that's 3/4 inch meter size. But this agenda item, ordinance, says 1505 to 1580, which is 75 cents for 3/4 inch.
That's per month. So maybe the city newsletter, because we get billed twice a month, so that may be what...
So and I apologize for the city newsletter article. That should have talked about city council contemplating an increase. But yes, that's, staff decided to include the bi-monthly rate simply because that's what people see on their bills.
Okay. Okay, it came up at Coffee with the Counselor, so...
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we approve ordinance 1457.
Well,
Counselor, prior to that, I think we might need a motion to correct the amounts that you had mentioned and reflect that the parentheses are the correct amounts, and so the actual written words should be modified to match the parenthetical dollar amounts. And that's my understanding, right, Pete? It's the parentheticals that are correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think we need a motion to correct the ordinance first, and then we'll...
Can I just not make that as part of the...
If you want to make it all as a...
Well, and I think we need to have an ordinance to approve the first reading first.
Oh, because it's an ordinance and not
an ordinance.
Resolution.
So we need a motion to...
Well, this is where you...
So initially a motion
for your ordinance.
Why did we make it so difficult?
It's in the charter. It's unfortunate, but...
All right.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we edit ordinance 1457, subsection 5, to make the written out dollar amounts match the dollar amounts in parentheses.
And I'll add, change the effective dates in section 2 and 3 to match what has been updated here.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so the motion was made to amend ordinance number 1457 by item number 5 and the dates, the dollar amounts, by Councilor Sickman and seconded by Councilor Johnson. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, so the ordinance will be changed to reflect that, or the written ordinance, and now we have to, I will entertain a motion to do the first reading of ordinance number 1457, correct?
Actually, Jolene knows the... Is it a... I forget how, if it's a motion or just you need to do the first reading.
We do accept a motion to accept the first reading. We usually have the Assistant City Administrator read the ordinance by title. So we'll have her read it by title, and then we need a motion to accept the first reading.
Okay.
Okay, ordinance number 1457, an ordinance amending chapter 13.04 of the Gladstone Municipal Code by increasing water rates and reaffirming all remaining provisions of chapter 1304 of the Gladstone Municipal Code.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance 14, first reading of ordinance 1457.
Second. Okay, so Councilor McMahon made the motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 1457, was seconded by Councilor Johnson. Do we need to have a discussion? Oh,
Oh,
okay.
we don't have to have a discussion. Do we have to have a discussion first before we vote?
Yes.
Yes? Any discussion on this?
And for me.
Nothing further? Okay, all in favor then of, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So the first reading of ordinance 1457 is done, and
Then
we can have,
read it by title again.
the second time.
So, ordinance number 1457, an ordinance amending chapter 13.04 of the Gladstone Municipal Code by increasing water rates and reaffirming all remaining provisions of chapter 13.04 of the Gladstone Municipal Code.
So moved. I'll second that.
Okay, so the motion was made by Councilor Nelson, was seconded by Councilor McMahon. Any further discussion? We're done with discussion. Okay, all in favor of the second reading, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, ordinance 1457 has been approved or passed. Moving down to item number 17 on our agenda is the development agreement request from HT Properties / Transu Property, 18121 Webster Road.
Mr. Mayor, I didn't mean to sneak up on you. Mike Robinson, on behalf of Mr. Tygeson. Mr. Tygeson had childcare duties tonight, and we were wondering if council would do us the courtesy of taking this item last, if you would amend your agenda and take this one last so he can be here for it. If you can, we would appreciate it. Thank
What
you.
do we have? What's the amendment? Oh, Tri-City discussion is 18. And do we have another one besides that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
City administrator.
Okay. All right, you guys okay with that? Moving it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're good? Okay. All right, so we're moving down to item number 18, which is the Tri-City discussion.
We haven't done anything on that, do we?
Who's going to start us off? You starting us off, Steve?
I can try. Do you want to introduce the meeting that you're going to tomorrow?
Well,
Briefly, and
yes,
I'll chime in.
so the Tri-City Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow at, I believe, 11:30 at the west offices at the county. So we emailed out to you a copy of the agenda. One of the items on there, item number 3, the alternative biosolids disposal IGA between CCSD and the Tri-City Service District. They're requesting a decision of the advisory committee members. And I believe Councilor Johnson wished to have a discussion about that this evening.
And in previous discussion, Mr. Boyce said that he could, it would take ideas and thoughts from the council. One of them that I had was that we don't have a public works director. West Lynn and Oregon City bring their engineers, their public works directors or engineers with them. I had a meeting with Pat Sissel from Sissel Engineering. He is available to attend. I've brought him up to speed on some of these issues. I think it would be a good idea to have him attend. Mr. Sissel is also working right now on a proposal for flow meter studies that we've talked about in the past, and plan to bring that to the council here soon. There are many technical issues that are going to be discussed, and I think it would be valuable to have Mr. Sissel there. Mr. Sissel has provided the city with a proposal of $250 to attend this meeting with Mr. Boyce and act on the city's behalf. So I'd like to know if the council would accept that, if that's a good idea. And then I have several thoughts of things that I would like Mr. Boyce to ask. Should I go into that, or do you want to talk about the having Mr. Sissel join Mr. Boyce tomorrow, or would you like to go next?
Well, I think it's within my authority to have Mr. Sissel come to the meeting. I just need a head nod from City Council if you would like me to do that. I'm seeing a lot of head nods.
I think it's a good idea.
There are many questions. I will go through them quickly, and if council has questions, I will try and fill in the blanks, some things that I would like to ask Mr. Boyce to consider. What is the rush to approve the solids IGA? It expires on 1/11/2016. Does TCSD really have the capacity to sell to CCSD based on regional wastewater meeting? If the plant is run in series instead of parallel, it appears like we have just barely enough for TCSD. I'm not sure what we're selling to CCSD.
Before we get too far, I'm writing feverishly here. If I could get a copy of your questions, that would be beneficial.
I can get you a copy of these questions,
okay,
yes.
Perfect.
Is running the solids plant in parallel an industry standard method for providing service? Is it good engineering and operational practice to go 13-plus years between inspections of an enclosed industrial space, such as a digester? Would any of this meet the requirement for an ISO 9000 certified process? And then there is the item here that Oregon City is asking for a bylaw amendment, removing the West Director as a voting member of TCSD. Currently, the advisory committee is made up of the city administrators from West Linn, Oregon City, and Gladstone, and then the West Director is a fourth voting member. My thought on that is that it would be better if it were just the cities that were voting and not the West Director. I guess this would lead to a logical question: why talk about these inane details in a Gladstone City Council meeting? And the fact of the matter is there's a lot of money at stake here. And the bigger picture is that county is asking for a lot of money to upgrade the sewer plant. I'm not sure that that directly benefits the city of Gladstone. It certainly benefits the city of Happy Valley. There are some political considerations there, and as well as financial. And so I think we need to keep this near the front burner, even though it involves some pretty dry technical stuff that goes over my head most of the time, as well as most other people's. Are there thoughts on any of this? Any other things to share?
Well, I'm curious reading through this because talking about the biosolids, and that if there's an emergency, Kellogg can send, or CCSD can send more to I'm going to say our plant, and if there's, and vice versa. But my understanding is Kellogg is pretty full.
I believe that to be true. I believe both plants are running at or over capacity.
So why have an agreement saying that you can send biosolids when there isn't any? Practicality, you can't.
Yes, that's part of the discussion I think that the Tri-City Advisory Committee should have, is what extra capacity are you selling here? There doesn't appear to be any. And the county is in a big hurry. It's in block letters on their agenda, that decision being requested. And I'm not sure, but that some of these questions can't have better answers before that committee is asked to make decisions.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. and I don't expect answers, it's just more forethought. This is a really big deal, this sewer plant. I mean, we are a partner in it, and they're talking about charter changes, removing a Clackamas County employee or entity.
By law. By bylaws.
Okay. Is there a reason that we wouldn't want elected officials making the decisions, being these are huge dollar decisions that are being made? And it's just more of a question than anything else. Is there a reason that city administrators...
Actually, I've heard some of the others on the committee express that, for instance, when we were making recommendations regarding rates, that really should be more of a policy function by an elected official. So I'm not sure if that was proposed, how much resistance to that there would be, if any.
And I don't know that it's the right way to go. It's just a question, and I don't know how the rest of the partners would feel in that. Yeah. But I think if we're going to do a bylaws change, if that is covered in the bylaws, that might be something to look at as well, just for discussion, if no other purpose. Yep. The other question I have, and this is because this is a really big thing, is we're talking about...
Fire!
Yeah.
See, either means there's a structure fire.
One out the door.
People firefighters to respond to engage. It's kind of old school.
Very often. I know. I think I only like once or twice in 7 years that it's
I know. I've never heard that yet.
Okay. I've been cut off a lot of ways, but that's the first time it's been done that way.
Very effectively.
Yes, it was. The second question is, with this being such a large discussion item, and fairly important, involving a lot of dollars, I definitely support bringing in Sissel to look at some preliminaries. My other question is, do we want to get some sort of legal advice on this as well? Because, I mean, these are some of these decisions or some of these recommendations that this board is going to be making to the county may not be well received. So I would think that we might want to make sure that we have legal standing on some of these requests to the county. So, I mean, I don't want to just...
I guess there are two separate issues, the bylaw issue and then the agreement, the IGA with CCSD 1. So, the bylaw issue, I think we can make any recommendations we wish to the county board. They can choose to include it or not, but I'd have to review the bylaws to see what is possible. But
yeah, and I'm probably maybe this isn't the appropriate time for this discussion if we're looking at just tomorrow's meeting. But I think there's going to be some decisions made or may not be made. But I think we definitely are probably going to at some point want some legal advice over the next several months of our decisions and standing on the direction that Tri-Cities chooses to go. And I hate to depend on other jurisdictions' partners in the sewer plant's interpretation without doing our own due diligence.
Yes.
Just a thought.
You are correct, and I'm still trying to work through the engineering piece of it and try to figure out, with you all's help, how to phrase those questions to legal, and have not quite gotten there yet. As for the representation on the Tri-City Advisory Committee, that was set up originally. You're right, it is a little strange, and I have heard elected officials in Oregon City question that as well, as to whether this makes sense to continue with having city administrators in those positions instead of elected officials. In fact, there's another conflict, I think, is that the Regional Wastewater Advisory Treatment Options, whatever committee, the one that's got about a yard and a half full of words, those are all elected officials. And so I sit on that board. I am Gladstone's representative. Mayor Holliday is the representative from Oregon City. Council President Frank is the representative from West Lynn, though I think it's just changed to the new mayor. Axelrod will be at the next one of those meetings. So it is a little bit strange that, you know, the Tri-City Advisory Committee is city administrators. And that is something that if you have a chance to ask, I think it's a good thing to ask and see what they have to say.
I was curious with that in thoughts is that my understanding the County Board of Commissioners met today in a work session talking about the governance of the plant. Mm-hmm. Anybody attend? Any idea what they discussed?
Wasn't aware. Yeah.
I'm sure we'll hear about it tomorrow, but I haven't heard yet.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to say I'm also concerned about the governance. Not only, like I say, but the city administrators versus elected. I think elected would be, but also that even though it has passed muster legally, where we have the commissioners sitting as the governing board for both, but I don't think it passes the smell test when you've got an agreement that has the same person's signature on the same signing page. Mm-hmm. And so that, in my opinion, needs to change, so that we, you know, I mean, at what time do they, you know, are they looking after Tri-City's interests or District 1's? I mean, they can't be wearing a hat at the same time, because there's going to be times when there's going to be issues that are going to conflict between the two districts, and when you have the same people in signing off on it, so we need to, I think, have different people running the show for each one.
Agree. Yep.
And I also agree about talked about the director, U.S. director being a voting member. I mean, I think that might have been included back when, you know, so they're all appointed members from the cities, and you know, it's a 4-member entity. You've got the 3 cities in the county. The county's running the place, and we're the customers. So, you know, back 35 years ago, it probably sounded like a good idea when they put this together, but I think that changed along with maybe getting elected officials involved in that. And then something else I have a concern about, and I'm not sure how this is going to play a part in it, is Oregon City's right-of-way franchise fee. I'm really kind of concerned. And that's a real bone of contention between Oregon City and the county right now, and we're kind of stuck in the middle.
We are, unfortunately, and I've had that conversation with some of our counterparts in Oregon City, and the discussions continue. But yes, I agree that that's a concern. It is our plant, but yet we're now, even though historically we had not been charged, we're now being charged for having pipelines to our plant within Oregon City. And ultimately, with a governance change, we would have absolutely no control over that franchise fees. Yes, those conversations have happened and are continuing to happen. As to your other one, I had a thought about the West Director. That was all done, of course, at a time when the Tri-City plant only connected up the three cities. There was no physical connection to CCSD. There was no relationship with CCSD. So the combination may have outlived the purpose. And at one time that might have made perfect sense. But now that they're connected, that could easily be a conflict. And it might be better if the West Director is also the West Director for CCSD, if he was separated from voting in that, yes.
That's true, because CCSD was just attached to Kellogg.
Kellogg, yes. Yeah.
Your question on some of the questions you put down to them, engineering ones, maybe it would be a good thing to get Sissel Engineering involved on that too. Just see if those questions are in fact the way they would suggest asking them, which might help keep out of the...
We can ask, yes.
So what I'm hearing and what I'm taking away from this conversation is that Council has some additional questions about the IGA, and understanding that, I would guess that you'd advocate that I request that they push off the decision to another meeting, so some of those questions can be answered.
That would be my direction, yes.
I'm just looking for a consensus so I represent you folks as directed.
And one of my concerns about this meeting, seating around the table has been somewhat fluid, and although it's supposed to be city administrators and West Director and commission liaison, there have been elected officials sitting at the table, and there have been engineers sitting at the table. I'm not sure what's going to happen, and it may be that now they're going to purify that, and it will go back to being just city administrators, just the West Director, and just Commissioner Savas, in which case Pat Sissel may not be sitting at the table with you. I think I would try and have him sit behind you or something, but he may not have the opportunity to speak even. I'm not sure. So.
Yeah, usually the meetings are pretty informal, and anyone in the audience who wants to speak usually is recognized.
Yeah.
So I don't think that would change, especially if they're affiliated with the city. I could call on Mr. Sissel and have his input provided.
All right.
Curiosity question. You mentioned that the agreement expires next year. And I was on page 2, Article 3, under terms, it says June 30th, 2015.
Where are you looking? It's a 5-year agreement.
Well,
it started 6th of January 2011.
But this has a pretty definite date with a provision to extend it 5 years by written agreement.
I don't know why that's in there, because the date is shown at the top as January 2011.
Well, I know that's when it was agreed to.
Yeah.
Back 4.5 years ago. But my take on this is this agreement expires at the end of the month, and I have to confer to our.
Yeah, I don't know which one. I looked at the top of it, and it's fairly clear there. So.
Council, where do you see the June 30th date?
So page 2, Article 3, general terms. On term, it would be the third line down. This agreement shall expire on June 30th, 2015, unless terminated sooner as provided herein. The parties may agree to extend this agreement for 5-year terms by written agreement.
Yeah. So the way I have read this is that June 30th is the expiration date, but the parties can extend it for 5 years.
Right.
It doesn't mean that the agreement itself was a 5-year agreement, because it was a January 2011 date, so I think it was a little bit longer than 5 years when they signed it, or at least that's the way I'm reading it. I agree with what June 30th, 2015 is the expiration, unless it's been amended that I'm unaware of.
No. Okay.
I missed that. I saw the 5-year part. I didn't see the,
right.
And I just didn't.
So that's why they're
January.
wanting,
yeah.
A decision tomorrow, because it expires at the end of the month.
Yeah.
So, well, we can, my contention is let it expire and we'll renegotiate, but that's just my take on it.
I would say month to month while discussions continue, but there may be reasons not to do that as well. I don't know.
Is that consensus?
I don't think we know for sure what the downside would be of letting it expire, and that concerns me. So I don't know that I would want to renew a 5-year agreement, but if we can get a month-to-month while this gets figured out, I think that would make sense.
And it can be amended by agreement of the parties. So I think that if the parties are in agreement, you can do it for less than 5 years.
But you have to remember the parties that are doing the agreeing are the same ones.
Same parties, right?
Yeah,
or
Board
the
of
same
County Commissioners.
Decision makers. And which is, as I'm hearing you earlier, a big part of your concern.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure what Gladstone can particularly do.
Well, according to one of the commissioners, they take the advice of the advisory committees and follow what they recommend. So I guess it's up to the.
So is the consensus to attempt to go month to month with the agreement?
I mean, that would be mine. I wouldn't go for the 5 years.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah.
Either let it expire or go month to month would be my suggestion.
Seeing some heads shaking yes.
Yep. I'd always do the month to month versus letting it expire, just so you don't run into something that unforeseen.
I agree with you.
If there's something we don't know about having to transfer our solids to Kellogg and it happens on a regular basis and we let it expire and can't do that, that would be a bad thing. And I just don't think we know that we do or we don't.
From my understanding, we couldn't if we wanted to, but that's a Sissel question.
I don't think a pipeline is going to get turned off anytime soon, regardless of what this piece of paper says. But
well, no. What I'm saying is they don't have the capacity to.
Yeah, it'll back up manhole cover someplace in Happy Valley. So I don't think that that's going to happen. But I think that there should be some time to answer some serious questions about whether we really have what we're trying to sell. So.
Yeah.
So the consensus is to send Pete to do a month to month until we can resolve some of those questions.
I would think that would be a good place to
Yes? Yes?
I like
yes.
that.
Everybody's good? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And do we have consensus on the bylaw question? I thought I heard consensus that you'd prefer just the 3 cities having a vote. And did you want me to bring up the question regarding who should be on the advisory committee, elected officials as opposed to administrative staff?
Yes. Personally, I would, yeah.
Okay. So I will advocate for that.
Thank you.
Well, I saw HT Properties, but maybe...
Anything else? Yeah. Anything else on that item, and then we're done with that? Pete's got his work cut out for him?
Yep.
I'll get that to you in email, yes. Thank you. You guys ready?
Oh, okay. Okay, we are going to roll back to item number 17, the development agreement request from HT Properties, Shansu Property, 18121 Webster Road. Okay. And, I guess we kick it off, or...
Well, I've spoken with City Attorney Dufman regarding this, and he sent out a memo that I believe everyone has access to. And I was not at the meeting in which the last proposal occurred, but my understanding is that the development agreement reflects what was discussed at council and the terms that council wanted. I think Councilor Sickman had a couple of questions. One was that it had no termination date, which I think that they'll be open to putting a date on there, and I think that's a good idea. And I think your second question was regarding the SDC credits. And it's my understanding that there are no credits and there is no money at this point, that they are paying all costs. I think there was a discussion of that at one point, but I thought that was removed.
Yeah, no, it wasn't so much on it wasn't on credits. I'm sorry, I didn't maybe make that clear. The question is, I believe they're asking for the SDC fees to be locked at today's price, but with no expiration of this agreement, it may be, if they didn't do anything for 10 or 15 years and their SDC fees are paid and then they decide to develop, they should be considerably more at that time.
Okay, I understand the question now. And as City Attorney Dukeman said, that the city has some discretion on how we structure this development agreement. I'll let Mike speak, Mr. Robinson speak to the SDC issue, since he's going to be more familiar with that specific one.
Right, so I pulled up City Attorney Dukeman's email, and he mentioned that as far as SDCs go, we've previously taken the position that Oregon law would not require the city to issue a refund. However, if the developer came in with the development at a later time, they may request a credit for the amount paid, previously paid.
So, I'm sorry, I lost you somewhere in this. So
they pay X dollars in SDC credits, but then they don't build for some time. Those SDC credit, or the SDC amounts, have since risen. At least this is my understanding of your question. And what the City Attorney Dukeman says is that there's no requirement to refund those, but that if they were to develop in the future, it's been the policy, my understanding again, policy that the city would give them the credit amount of whatever the SDCs that they had paid, if they prepaid them, to the offset of the cost in the future.
Right, but from my understanding of the agreement, they're asking that the SDC fees be locked at this time, and so there would be no future increase in SDC fees.
Correct, but then we also didn't have the term in here, which I believe that you suggested, and we think is a great idea to put the term in, so that it does expire.
And what is that?
Well, the council has a lot of discretion. This development agreement is...
Oh, okay, so that has... it hasn't been proposed then?
No.
Okay, thank you.
when, does anybody know when these SDC fees will be looked at and changed? Is it first of the year?
I redo the SDC fees every September 1st, but the overall SDC fees eventually will be restructured when the master plans are done.
Anybody want anything else before we move? I mean, do you want to stay on that topic, on the SDCs, or do we?
Well, this is the only thing that appears to have changed, and
Right.
what they are asking is their number 6 fixed system development charge fees. Can we get a, I don't know if we can even ask this, but can we get a commitment for a build date, or are we looking at waiting 20 years and tying up the property? I don't know if I can even ask that question, so.
Well,
yeah, you can.
Can I ask that question?
Yeah, sure.
Can we get a commitment on a build date?
May I, Mr. Mayor?
yeah, sure, come on up.
Good evening. Mike Robinson on behalf of Hans Tygeson. Mr. Tygeson is now here. Let me, if I could, Mayor, answer both the questions. Councilor Sickman, you suggested a termination date in the agreement. That's perfectly acceptable to us. Our goal is to go through your land use review process, hopefully obtain the approval of the Planning Commission, and start construction as soon as feasible. The timing of that depends somewhat on when we can be deemed complete, when the Planning Commission can hear us, and then when we can pull our construction permits. I talked with Mr. Abma today about a date, and I talked with Mr. Tygeson. Our preference would be that the development agreement have a 3-year period, that it be able to be extended at the discretion of the City Council for another 2 years, and that time period not include any appeals. So our goal would be to construct as quickly as we could if we get a land use approval. So I'm guessing within the next 12 to 24 months. But to give ourselves a little cushion if we could, we'd prefer that the termination date be 3 years. Council have the discretion to approve an extension of up to 2 years, and that time period not include appeals. If you're busy with an appeal of some sort, you don't want the clock running while you're trying to favorably resolve the appeal. So, but we agree that we do have a termination provision of sort in paragraph 4, conditions precedent, but you're asking for a time period, and we think that's appropriate. And Councilor Johnson, we had talked to you at the March meeting about whether you would fix the SDC fees. Again, we're trying to achieve certainty. We're not asking for any reimbursement from the city. We're not asking for SDC credits. We're not asking for any payments. The only thing we are asking for, and I should have put this in the agreement. I simply forgot that we had discussed this. We would like you to fix the fee. I believe you have that authority under ORS Chapter 223, which is the statutory section that governs system development charges. It's your call, but that's the only consideration that we'd ask for you. And our hope is that we construct within the next available building season. Certainly not 20 years, much less a couple of years. Mr. Mayor, are there other questions of council? We're happy to answer them.
I've got one.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Sickman, you mentioned, and I believe you guys agreed to, a key put into one of the lines.
So it could, I apologize for interrupting, it was a T so that it could go off and serve the public property. Is that correct, sir?
I believe that's what he had in mind.
What I had
and it wasn't
talked
mentioned
about and kind of pointed on the map is where you are going to connect at the backside of Stone Oaks.
Right.
Was possibly putting a T in there and then connecting that and continuing the pipe to, and a right-of-way to the property line, where if there was ever a severe problem on the pipe that wasn't being replaced, it would give us an option of running our service line from there.
I guess I'll answer that question, and if he agrees and it's council's desire, we can certainly, with your direction, add that to the development agreement.
Yeah, and I would like to, I think that there should be room to be able to put that pipe in there, and it's not, there's a couple, 150 feet or so of ductile iron, so, I mean, I think that's achievable. I mean, the SDC fee is an issue that I thought was, we had talked about. That was something I thought was pretty clear understanding. I mean, this is something we can accommodate. Is that SDC? Are we good on that issue?
I have to ask the mayor.
We had talked about
I don't remember freezing the rate. I don't remember that.
We had asked for that.
We raised it in our discussion with council in March, Mr. Mayor, but it did not come up 2 weeks ago, and we did not put it in the first version of the development agreement. We sent Mr. Boyce a revised version this Monday morning asking that the council consider that provision.
So, Pete and/or Jolene, what's the forecast for the SDC fees? I mean, my understanding is that they're, I guess, how should I say this, pretty reasonable at this point. Are we seeing a 2% increase? Is it a 50% increase? I mean, do we have any idea?
In the next couple of years, I would anticipate that we'd still just adjust them by, Jolene, is it the Seattle CPI?
The Seattle Construction Cost Index that comes out in August is how we do it.
That's how we adjust it year after year. Once the sewer master plan is complete, then we could adjust the sewer SDC. it was my understanding that council wanted to get all of the master plans complete before we start talking about rates and SDCs. So that would mean we still need to get the transportation SDC, or master plan, complete, and the sewer master plan.
And parks.
So those are further out. So if they start construction within the next 2 years, most likely the only adjustment that would occur is that Seattle construction price index, which would be in the range, I would guess, somewhere around 5% or less.
When is the normal time for SDCs to be assessed and paid?
When one applies for a building permit, when you come in for a building permit, and I trust that the city's process, but typically when one applies for a building permit and pays all your other fees, you're also assessed your system development charges. Councilor Sickman.
I don't have any other questions.
Mayor, are there any other questions we can answer? I have a question for our attorney, but don't have any further questions.
I don't have any.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
And if I could, if the council chooses to authorize this tonight, you might want to specify the changes in the development agreement so we're clear about what changes we might need to make in it. At least the T. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Abma, the June 2nd memo from David says authorize the city administrator, it's a recommendation, to authorize the city administrator to sign the agreement with HT Properties. Do you know, is there any changes, any thoughts with number 6 in there? Has that changed our city attorney's
With number
position?
6?
The fixed system development change fees.
Oh.
There was the...
Well, it's really council's discretion on both the term and whether to fix the STCs. So we can make the changes, and I don't know if there's a term in here that was also changed, or just the fixed. Just the fixed. It's your discretion. It's a policy call. So maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, Councilor. But if this council wants to go that route and fix them and put a term in of 2 years or whatever your term, 3, I think they suggest, whatever works for you, then at least both parties have some certainty. And the thing about fixing these is you also know kind of what you're getting, because they're proposing certain easements and moving water lines and such. But this is not something you have to do, and you can put the terms in it that you wish.
But this doesn't change, this modification doesn't change your recommendation or David's recommendation to authorize to continue.
I don't think it'd change David's recommendation, because it's purely such a policy decision. It's
okay.
Yeah, it's going to increase. There's a cost to it, but that's policy.
Okay, thank you.
You know, I'm really I'm thinking about this, and I would think that with the addition of the T and running that pipe to the property line, like we discussed, I would think that it would be reasonable to approve this agreement with a 3-year lock. I wouldn't allow for extensions, and the main reason I say that is they don't actually pay this until they do their application to the Planning Commission. Now, I don't know where they are in their planning department or in their planning of this, but if they're ready tomorrow, they go down, they pay the fees, and they start doing the planning and the building permits and everything else. They then have got 2 years through the planning approval. They've got 1 year certain, and they can come back and request an extension of 1 year of the approval. So they, in essence, they would actually be locking the fees for 5 years with a 3-year agreement on this. And if they don't get it in 5 years, then whatever the SDCs would be then is what would be required from them.
May I just add something to discuss? So two things. If you do have a term, and you may want to ask your city attorney about this, it should run from the effective date of the development agreement. So I think, Councilor Sigmund, it would be, if you sign the development agreement, let's say July 1st, that 3-year period would run from July 1st. And our 2-year period for a land use approval, assuming we're able to get it, would be within that 3 years. And the only other thing I might ask Mayor is if it's Council's desire to authorize signing of the development agreement, would you include the provision in the term that it excludes appeal periods so that, the clock isn't running if there happens to be an appeal? That's pretty common in agreements of this type, but again, it's your discretion.
I wouldn't have an issue with that, but because of the way land use laws are, you got 120 days, and that includes all appeals, right?
Well, that's local appeals.
Yeah.
So when I say appeals,
okay.
I mean, I'm sorry, I apologize, I should have explained it. When I mean appeals, I mean something beyond the city level.
Okay.
So that's what we would like excluded. The 120 days, that's included in the 3-year period, Councilor Sigmund. Thank you.
Well, that makes sense.
Any further discussion on this matter? Do we have a consensus to have Pete then do it? 3-year term? Freezing the rate, SDC rates, for that period of time?
From the time they apply and pay.
Yeah, exactly.
A
motion that we do that.
I'm sorry,
Miss Jolene. Oh.
I want to make sure that we're clear that when we freeze the rates, we're freezing Gladstone's rates. We can't freeze West rates that I calculate SDCs for.
Correct. Mike Robinson again. The only authority you have is to freeze those rates over which you have control. And our proposed Section 6 is from whatever the rates are on the date the agreement is entered into, those are the rates. And it's only city rates. It's not another district's rates.
No, I was talking about something a little different. Maybe not. I was talking about when the SDC rates are calculated and paid. At that time, the rates would freeze. If it was a year from now before they got to that process, they would pay the rates at that day, not the rates
on the
today.
day we signed the agreement,
not the
or
day
the
we
date
signed
that they signed the
right.
agreement.
Right.
That's not freezing the rate, though. That's the rate. That's the applicable rate. When you walk in and pay, you're paying the rate of the day. So I think what they're asking is that as part of this development agreement.
You're right. Siren affected my thinking.
All right. Is everybody crystal clear what we're talking about?
Yes.
Any other questions or concerns? We good with this?
Did we want to include the language about the T?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So we have the T, we have the freezed rates, and then we have a 3-year term
Right.
And the appeals.
with the appeal not counting towards.
My thought is to revise the agreement. We understand what council's consensus is, to revise the agreement in red line, send it to your city attorney and to Mr. Boyce, have them make sure it reflects what council's decided. And may I ask Mr. Abma a question?
Yeah.
We drafted the agreement for the mayor to sign. Is it the city's practice to have the city administrator sign such an agreement?
We've done it both ways, so whatever council's
city administrator.
I'm
Mr.
okay
Mayor?
with.
Okay.
I mean, rather than add another layer, you guys can hash it out, and you know what we're looking for, and then just Pete sign it and get it done.
I'll change the agreement in that way also.
We good? We good with that, Len?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're making some changes tonight. We're getting consensus. Are we going to see this again? Is this going to come before the council again, or is this it?
This would be it.
Okay. All right.
Okay. We all agree? Consensus? You guys know what we want? Got it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Balls in your court, for sure. Okay, skipping down to item number 19, discussion of city administrator / interim city administrator positions.
We don't have any paper on that, do we?
Yeah.
This right here, this new one. I mean, this is it.
Oh, that's right, okay,
Yeah.
right. I mean, okay, thank you. In the back somewhere.
All right.
You want me to start it? I'm not quite sure what the topic is going to be.
No, this is what I printed off. When did you guys get that?
It was sitting on our table. It was
Oh.
box. Oh, maybe you don't get one.
Here, it's just titled description.
Oh, okay.
Different from different cities. You can look at it inside.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Thank you.
All right, well, we'll start the discussion in that, the interim city, this assistant city administrator, we had, appointed her as the interim city administrator when Pete's contract expires, and since that time, she has decided she was not going to do that position. So now we have to discuss what the next steps are to fill that void in end of June, beginning of July. So that's where we're at. And I think Steve Johnson and Tom Mercereau and myself met with LB Day to start the process, and so take it away from there. Okay.
So,
I mean,
is this the interim we're talking about, or
yes?
Okay.
We need both. I mean,
Right. Well, no, I understand. I didn't know if we were talking interim or were we talking.
22 days until July 1.
Right.
And we don't have an interim city administrator right now. And we need desperately to come up with a plan. This is probably the most important thing that a council will do, is find interim city administrator and indeed recruit and hire a city administrator. So that's, I guess my question was, what are our intentions here?
I went on League of Oregon Cities website today and saw where they have 3 different people that are at least show that that they have a resume or whatever application on file with them as interim.
2 of those people are in the Portland metro area. 1 is outside of Medford someplace.
Okay,
Yes,
so you've already checked
yeah,
also.
Yeah, I
Okay.
did, and I think.
I did also.
Yes.
So there are 3 interims. One of them actually in his profile has said available on short-term notice. What this means, I don't know, but there are 3 people through the League of Oregon Cities that have city administrator backgrounds that have been working, it looks like for the past several years, as interim city administrators. It's not where somebody's just, well, I'll take that position on. So that's a possibility of looking at that.
Should we contact those 2 people?
Oh, how's that process look? I guess the question, who does that? Is that Pete's job? Is that Jolene's job? Or is that...
No, well, I don't think it'd be appropriate for either one of them to be recruiting for that myself, but I would think it would be either one of us or LB or I don't know, or even maybe the city attorney. It looks like he's wanting to speak.
Well, from the way the charter reads, and although it's an interim position, I think it would be treated as the city manager position, so it'd be the same process you would use to find the city manager, which the council has full authority over city manager position. So what I guess I'm saying is if you were wanting to enter into looking for candidates, I think it'd be appropriate to authorize the mayor or whomever you wish to start making those decisions as far as reaching out.
Can we actually reach out as city councilors and make those contacts?
You can't make you're not signing a contract on your own, but sure, of course you can.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
So what does that look like? What do y'all want to see? Who's going to make the phone calls?
Do we have a written policy or procedure for hiring a city administrator?
No. No. I mean, we've had...
Well, that's it. I just was...
We've only had 3 in the last, 45, almost 50 years, so I highly rate... Well, we don't.
can we put a committee together that has the time that would like to do this?
To do the hiring of the interim?
No,
or
it would, it couldn't be the hiring, that would be...
that process.
But that process, because we're looking at a very short time frame to get something done.
And come back and make a recommendation to the larger council. To actually make contact with some of these people, whether through the LOC or through recruiters or through help by Mr. Day, and come back to the council with recommendations after having those conversations.
We'll probably need to have a special meeting. I mean, granted, we are scheduled or planning, I would assume we're going to meet in 2 weeks, which would be the 23rd, but that would be, you know, that's less than a week.
He doesn't have anything solid in his hand, so I will suggest maybe meeting next Tuesday. I mean, this is one of those issues that is that important. And having those recommendations back to the council by Tuesday the 16th. Because this is that important.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you're going to try to get a committee together, identify people.
A committee of counselors.
We need to make, well, I'm assuming that it's less than 4.
Yes.
Right. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Right.
I think,
Right.
yeah. 3 at the most. All the time, yeah. I wouldn't be available. School gets out on next Monday, so, and it needs to happen between now and then. I wouldn't have the time.
I would volunteer to be part of that subcommittee.
Pat, do you have the time?
I could make the time.
It's 2. Jim?
I would be involved if there's a need, but I have no problem standing on the outside either and supporting how I can. Whatever the council feels, if 2 would be better or 3 would be better.
Say you volunteer, Kim.
I will volunteer.
There you go. All right. So we have our subcommittee, and you guys will meet tomorrow, whenever you can.
Tonight.
All right.
And what about do you think that we can get recommendations back here by next Tuesday? I mean, that's the first question. The second question is the council willing to come together again for another meeting next Tuesday?
No, well, and I wanted to remind you, you also have a joint meeting on the 15th with the City Hall Police Station Advisory Committee.
Maybe we could add
That's on Monday.
Maybe you could add on to that meeting.
There we go.
Is that too soon? Soon enough?
Well, I think that we should at least by that time have quite a bit to report on. If we don't have a recommendation, considering the short amount of time that we have, we should be at least reporting to the council where we are with that.
So, can I just ask what time you're planning on having a meeting next Tuesday? Because I have a planning commission meeting in here.
No.
I think it's next Monday.
We're not talking about doing it Monday.
Oh, okay.
The
All right.
Monday right after
following the
Got it. Thank you. Sorry.
City Hall thing.
What sort of recommendation would the council like to have when we have a recommendation?
I think what the council wants is just us to meet and start the process. I don't think we need anything else beyond that. The 3 of us meet tomorrow, make some phone calls, get some stuff out there, and just see what we can start working with, and come back Monday and say, okay, we've made the phone calls, we've contacted, this is what we see, this is some things, and go with that, and not worry about what they all think about it right now.
What sort of time frame are we looking at offering for this position? Would this be?
Based on what was on the site, it looked like 3 or 4 months. It looked like typically those engagements that they were involved in were 3 or 4 months. So
July 1 through probably
October, November.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, considering this would this be the next meeting we have? Personnel matter, would that be executive session? Would that be open meeting? What?
I don't believe it, no, it doesn't have to be an executive, well, are you talking about your internal discussions about hiring? You can do that in an executive session. But then if you're going to make the decision, and it's going to be an open session.
So maybe our meeting on Monday after meeting with the task force should be an executive session if we're talking specifics about maybe hiring somebody?
If you're discussing specific people that you've reached out to and the pros and cons of hiring whichever particular one.
Would be my goal to be doing exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we could get that advertised as...
So in preparing the agenda...
I would need to look at the, you're talking about for the exemption?
Right, so I'm seeing the work session with the City Hall Police Station Committee, and then I'm seeing a special meeting with an executive session and the option to go into the public meeting and make a decision.
If you want to do it that quickly, you do have the meeting on the 23rd. I'm in my mind, I'm working through this, trying to think of how you're reaching out. You've got some candidates in mind. They're interested as well, I hope. And then you have your executive session meeting, and you debate the pros and cons of each and who you would like to make your offer to. And then if you could do it that night and come back out of council and regular session and make a decision, or you do meet the next week if you want to do it. You've already reached out to the person, you've had discussions, they know the time frames. I don't know how quickly you want to do it. Sometimes I don't want to do it too rushed, but I know you're on a time crunch as well.
But if we go ahead and advertise an open meeting after the executive session, we could open the meeting and close the meeting without any decision if we weren't prepared.
Correct. If you think there's a possibility you might take action that night, you could schedule it as a regular meeting
Probably
after
know
the
about
executive
15
session.
minutes before we go into the meeting, whether we have enough information for an action or not.
Yeah.
So
for schedule it.
My personal opinion is I think we need to schedule it as Pete talked about, with a work session, executive session, and then an open session. And if we don't need to use the open session, we won't. We'll bring it back to the following. But this is very important and very time sensitive.
Sounds good?
Yeah.
That's it for that topic? Business from the councilors?
I'm a little concerned about the city administrator position. You had a very good lady here that was qualified for 6 years, did an excellent job, didn't mess up in anything, and you chose to lose her in that process, and because of how the council is working right now, I am going to resign tonight. I'm through. I don't want to be part of this package. You guys can do whatever you want. Everybody's laughing at you. I don't want to be part of it. So as of tonight, I'm through.
Mr. Tom?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Steve?
Very briefly, I want to thank Jolene for her hard work on the Clackamas City's dinner. That was a well put together presentation and evening, and I want to thank her for her hard work on that.
Still doing coffee with a counselor. Still getting mediocre participation, probably having to do with summer. There was some comments made about trying to publicize it better. So we're still going to keep working on that and see how we can move that way forward. Len, we're going to miss you. Thank you for your years of service. I wish you'd reconsider.
Well, I've had 7 good years, and this is not what I expected to see in a council.
Nothing at this time.
Parks Board was here earlier, which I really appreciated them coming. We had a meeting last week. Besides the what was discussed tonight, they're going to be passed on through staff. We should be seeing here in the near future some revised park rules, and so that we get get going with them. I know that's been battered around for the last year or so, so hopefully that will get taken care of so that Scott can get his new signs built, and we're you know, doing good things. And I also, Lynn, want to thank you for all your years, and would ask that you reconsider. I know spent several years on Planning Commission with you, and now you're a couple of years here. So I know you love this city, and so appreciate what you have done, and I'm sure knowing you're not going to be just riding off in the sunset. So thank you.
I don't have anything. I want to thank everybody for coming, and this meeting will be adjourned at 8:07 p.m.